You know, being an English major isn't all fun and games. It's not all Toni Morrison and Joan Didion and Virginia Woolf and T.S. Eliot. Sometimes it's the Midnight Library. Sometimes you have to read the Midnight Library for your university class and then write positive things about it. That is what I have found myself needing to do. This is something that I should have been reading over the course of the semester, and I completely avoided because who the fuck wants to read the Midnight Library? The only way I can possibly force myself to read this book is by doing a bad faith reading of it. So I'm starting out with some disclaimers. I am reading this coming in with a massive personal bias. This is not a book I have ever been interested in reading ever. I think the premise is corny. I don't expect the writing to be very good. I think when things are this incredibly popular, they're often not that great, particularly books. This just isn't my taste. It's way, way, way too earnest. I think it's gonna really try to deliver a message to me, a message that I don't think is gonna be very nuanced. I have a lot of bias, okay? If you liked this book, there's probably nothing wrong with you, and that's probably okay. But I think you should skip this video because I think you're probably not going to be happy. What I'm going to do here is nitpick this. I'm going to be so incredibly full of hate. I am going to be biased. I'm going to be mean. And if you enjoyed this, I don't think this video would be a good video for you to watch. I don't want you to argue with me in the comments. I have to get through this. This is the only way I'm going to be able to get through it. It's not fair, okay? I'm not going to be fair. I am going to be cruel. I am 100 pages into it. And I already know that this is not going in a direction that I want it to go in. I already can feel that anything positive about this book, I'm just blind to. I can only see its faults. And I want to talk to you about all of its myriad faults. So in chapter 1 of the Midnight Library, we are introduced to Nora Seed, and we have the knowledge that in 19 years' time, she will decide to die. This is kind of like a prologue. It's introducing us to her and also to her high school librarian, Mrs. Elm. The two of them are playing a game of chess together. This chapter, along with all of the book up until they get to the Midnight Library, is just purely exposition. It's just this book telling us what Nora is like. We know that she's intelligent. We know that she quit swimming, which is something that she used to be really good at. We know that she's supposed to be kind of like an outcast type, like she likes books more than she likes people. She'd rather be in the library with her librarian friend. And we also learn at the very end of this chapter that something very serious has happened. Mrs. Elm gets a call and she says, "Yeah, Nora's here, what's up?" And then she goes, "Oh no. Oh my God, oh no." So there's some sort of intrigue, we want to figure out what this call was about. So like I said, this first chapter tries to establish Nora as intelligent. It doesn't actually do that though. It just tells us that she's intelligent through Mrs. Elm commenting that she could do anything with a brain like hers. And she makes these comments because Nora has random trivia knowledge. This is something that happens again and again in this book where Nora is supposed to be smart. She's supposed to be kind of an intellectual, but the way that she's portrayed as smart is just by having just random factoid knowledge. That's it. To me, that's more of a signifier of having a greater capacity for memory than it is of actually being intelligent. Nora is just meant to fit this archetype of a kind of brooding, intellectual outcast because she chooses to be sort of person. Because this chapter is really just trying to introduce us to who our lead character is, it's very clunky. The dialogue is not realistic. The dialogue just serves the purpose of giving us information about Nora. There's also a clunkiness here with this dissonance in voice with the dialogue. The two of them speak to each other in a very kind of clipped and formal way. She says, "Yes, I suppose it is." And maybe that's just a British thing, but the voice of the narration is a lot more casual and colloquial. It says that Nora and Mrs. Elm, the librarian, are on the same wavelength, which just doesn't feel like it fits in to this very formal way that they're speaking to each other. So after this chapter closes with Mrs. Elm receiving some devastating call with information that we're not privy to, the book jumps 19 years into the future, which is now 27 hours before Nora decides to die. She's sitting around waiting for something to happen, and then something does happen. A man knocks at her door. This man she recognizes. His name is Ash. He asked her out for coffee a few years ago. I don't think they actually ever went out on a date. Ash is in a really weird mood. He seems weirdly sad. He seems like there's something that he wants to say, but he's not getting there. And Nora is picking up on it, but not really responding to it. She's kind of joking around. Ash finally comes out and says, "You told me you had a cat." And this is another nitpick, but just so annoying to me because Nora, instead of saying oh my God, what's happened to my cat? Like I think any cat owner with an outdoor cat would say if someone came knocking on their door like that. She says, yeah, I call him Volts. He finds Voltaire a bit pretentious. It turns out he's not massively into 18th century French philosophy and literature. He's quite down to earth, for a cat. Okay. Okay. Getting over that corny writing, which I'm not going to be able to. That will be a theme through this whole video. The writing's so fucking corny. Would she not immediately jump to my cat has died? Whatever. He finally has to come out and say, I'm pretty sure your cat's dead. She looks outside. Her cat is dead. The chapter ends with her looking outside, seeing her cat's dead body, and feeling a sense of despair, but also a sense of envy. It ends by saying, there was an inescapable feeling brewing in the darkness. Envy. Now, when I was reading that there was this feeling that she was trying not to acknowledge, I was thinking, oh, that feeling will be relief. She is meant to be someone who is suicidal, and she probably would feel relieved not having a creature who is dependent on her care. I think that's a far more realistic and maybe a more complex portrayal of Nora. But you can't sum it up in a pretty little sentence like you can with envy. And it feels like the drive here is not to actually have this interesting characterization. It is to have a mic drop end of chapter. And we move from that awesome end of chapter into the next afternoon, where she shows up late to her job at a music equipment shop. And her boss is treating her with this weird formality, this weird seriousness, and he starts talking to her about her own hopes and dreams and her past. This, of course, is just the book serving us another heaping, stinking pile of exposition. This is very strange because a lot of this is her boss saying things that he knows about her just outright to her. He says things like, you were in a band with your brother. He doesn't even really ask her questions, though she is being weirdly transparent and honest with him. He's mostly just describing her own life to her. We learn a lot, of course, about Nora in this chapter. I'm going to list off the information that we learn about her in these 4 pages, and I want you to know I'm not joking when I say almost all of this is derived entirely from what the boss is saying to her about herself, okay? We learn that she's depressed, but it's situational. She's 35. She's stuck in her hometown. She gave up swimming because it was a lot of pressure. She has a degree in philosophy. She spent a year in London after university, but came back because of her dying mom. She backed out of her planned wedding 2 days before. She backed out of a band she was in with her brother, who came in the other day and bought an amp. He doesn't live in Bedford, and he didn't tell her he'd be around, and she is, of course, upset about this. I don't know what this is trying to tell us about her relationship with her boss. I kind of think it's not telling us anything. I think it is just pure exposition. There's not really any worry about characterization or storytelling so far in this book. It's just trying to get us as much information as it can about Nora so that we can get to the part of the book that Matt Haig actually wants to write, which is the Midnight Library part. I don't know if the indication here is that Bedford, where they live, is a place that's small enough that he has just picked up all this information about her. It's not. I don't know what we're supposed to think about this. Why does he know all this much? Why does he know that was her brother who came in? It does make it seem in the next few chapters as well, like Bedford is the smallest town in the fucking world. And if it were, would this boss not think that firing her mainly because she looks sad because of her dead cat, does he not think that that would get around, that people would hear about that doesn't look very good for him? In the next chapter, we get the words big lol in parentheses, which almost made me take my own trip to the Midnight Library. That was really fucking tough to read. And it doesn't fit. That was there. I've read, 90 pages after this point, and it absolutely nothing like that has ever come back. It's so fucking weird. This chapter is just a page. It's just telling us about her relationship with her ex-fiance. I don't know. Nothing really happens. This chapter ends with her saying she has the sense that things were about to get worse. And I think that's kind of lame. I think it's a really lame and kind of cowardly choice and a really reductive view of suicidality that all of these terrible things have to happen to Nora for her to end her own life. It's like the book desperately needs us to empathize with her choice, but also it's not creating enough character for us to have any connection to her. It's just giving us all of this history. But everything does go wrong. She goes into a newsagent's, and in here she runs into Ravi, who is her brother's best friend and the other member of the band she was in with her brother that she dropped out of. Yet again, would you believe it? It's another conversation that is not actually realistic dialogue whatsoever. It's just giving us more information about Nora and her choices. Her and Ravi get into an argument about how she ruined his chances at stardom because they had a record deal with Universal all lined up and she dropped out last minute. She tells him that he blames everybody else for his shit life. This is a really weird conversation to me because all of these events seem to have happened like at least a couple of years ago. Would they not have had any conversation about it? It seems like this is them hashing it out for the very first time. And that doesn't make sense to me because this book is portraying Bedford, where both of them live, as the smallest town in the world. So you're telling me they've never run into each other. This is the very first time they've ever run into each other. She works at a music equipment shop. He's obviously a musician. And they're just like, they're having this argument in this newsagent's. This is the time. This is the moment. Ravi leaves in a huff and it transitions into another incredibly convenient conversation. Another example of how small Bedford seems to be. She talks to this stranger who she went to high school with. This conversation is letting us know that she was destined for greatness with her swimming. The stranger is telling her, I remember you were going to go to the Olympics. We had a whole assembly about you in high school. This is also talking about Nora kind of feeling like she's running out of time in her life. She's like a single, unmarried, childless woman. It's kind of getting into the expectations that are imposed on her by society, but like not really. Like the woman basically says, you better hurry up if you want kids. I don't know. I don't think Matt Haig is really going to have an interesting take on the expectations of women in society, but I could be wrong. I've only read 100 pages of this. I can't say I'm open to that possibility being true, but maybe it will be. So this chapter is very special because this is where my favorite thing about this book really starts happening, and that is the worst similes I have ever seen in my entire fucking life. I didn't notice them until this one, where it says, her despair growing like a weight she couldn't carry. That is so horrible. That is so bad. It's so uncreative. It's like genuinely, that is fucking awful. And oh my God, there are more. That is honestly the thing that is making me most excited to pick this horrible book up. I'm so thrilled to find more really, really, really shitty similes. Like, they're so fucking bad. There's another one in here. Her mind felt loud, like a symphony. Holy shit. Holy shit. That is so bad. There are other things that I found really annoying in here, really clunky. There's this crazy overuse of italics in the conversation between Nora and Ravi. In 8 sentences, 6 words are italicized, like literally almost every sentence. There's also some internet millennialisms that are hard to read. I'm having a pretty shit time too, if we're doing the Misery Olympics. Ravi, I can't say it. Ravi cough laughed. A hardness momentarily shadowed his face. The world's smallest violin is playing. Oh, give me a fucking break. What this book is really doing in this beginning part is setting up all these massive almosts in her life. All of these big choices that she has made in the past that lead to like really tangible what ifs that she can imagine. Being a swimmer, being in a band, marrying this guy. They're huge. They're just like huge, exaggerated things. And a lot of these choices are things that could have led to greatness. And I think that's another place this book fails, because it is clearly trying to be relatable to a wide audience. And I can't say that it didn't succeed in doing so. 2 million copies sold, 2 million reviews on Goodreads. So who knows how many fucking copies sold at this point? #1 international bestseller. Obviously, it has managed to be relatable to a wide audience. But would it not have been more relatable for these choices that she could have made to be a little bit smaller, a little bit more everyday? I think it's already dumbing the book down enough by making it this like the most palatable form of mental illness you can possibly imagine. But also like this choice that people could view as selfish. It's giving us all these reasons why we shouldn't think it's selfish, why we should be able to understand and empathize with this choice she makes, because it wants us to like the character, or at the very least to connect to this character. And it can't do that through good writing or good characterization or any emotion imbued into the text. It can only do that through what it's doing, which is just pure, simple exposition. There's not really actually feelings here. Like, I don't really see Nora as a character with much emotional depth. I feel like she's just thinking about her past all the time, because that's the information that the book is trying to give us. But if that's what you're trying to do, write a book that is relatable or palatable. Why not write Nora as someone who is like ordinary. She is this woman who is destined for greatness, or who could have reached greatness had she made different choices. I don't know. I feel like what if and obsessing over things that could have happened if I had made a different choice, that is a premise that is relatable to like fucking everyone in the universe. But what if I had become an Olympian? That's just too huge to really reach me. I can't connect to her or the story at all because of how obvious it needs to make itself. Moving on in the book, this next chapter is just telling us about Nora's relationship with her ex-best friend Izzy. She texts Izzy reads it immediately and doesn't respond, telling us that Izzy is thousands of miles away in Australia. We know that Nora was gonna go with Izzy to Australia, and she backed out of it last minute like she does everything. Haig's crimes here are just some really choppy, clunky writing. Again, like, Nora had loved him ever since she'd watched him play a brooding Plato in the Athenians on TV, and since he'd said in an interview that he'd studied philosophy. I can't explain why I hate that sentence. I think it's because it uses since twice. I don't know, I don't get the writing, and since he'd said in an interview that he'd studied philosophy. I feel like it should be, and because he'd said that. That's, again, just like truly a fucking nitpick. There's also this clunky ass, corny ass sentence. Maybe she was just really crap at it. At life. Stop it. Get a fucking grip. There's also the crime here of acting like Henry David Thoreau had no contact from the outside world when he was at Walden, which is just like well known not to be true. This is indicative of a larger problem with this theme of philosophy in this book, and that is that it is very clear to me, as someone who also is not that into philosophy, that Matt Haig wanted to write this kind of philosophical book, very dumbed down, of course, and a character who has a degree in philosophy, but he obviously did not want to do anything more than like very surface level research into any philosophies or philosophers, and I think that you can really feel that when you're reading this, that he's trying to give like just like little bits of philosophy. Oh, her cat's named Voltaire, like bullshit like that. I don't think he knows very much about it. It does not read to me as someone who is well versed in any sort of philosophy. In this next chapter, Nora's life continues to fall apart in the way that I was kind of hoping it would with her cat, where no one is reliant on her anymore. She's kind of just completely isolated on her own. This happens first through this kid that she teaches piano to. She doesn't show up for the lesson because she's kind of just wandering around Bedford, losing it, spiraling, and he ends up just completely quitting his lessons altogether. Then her next door neighbor, who she picks up medication for, this elderly man, he says, I actually don't need you to do it anymore. So she goes into her apartment and she starts drinking. While drinking in here, she starts thinking that everyone is better off without her. Now, I have a problem with this because she's thinking this without any rhyme or reason. I don't need this to be logical because this line of thinking is not logical, but it can't just be shoved in here because Matt Haig read the WebMD for suicidality. Like, she truly just randomly says it, and there's nothing more to it than that. Nothing before, nothing after. She just starts thinking that people are better off without her. I think that this is just an idea that Haig has about people with suicidal thoughts, and he just feels like he has to put it in, and there's nothing behind it, nothing of substance here. He read that WebMD page, he thought, you know what? I got a really good grasp on this. I'm gonna go write a fucking book. She gets really drunk, she leaves a voicemail kind of note to her brother, and then she decides to die. In this chapter, we get another simile, which I feel like we're talking about what should be heavy stuff, but actually is not in this book. Like, you could say this book has heavy themes, and like it really fucking does. Like, it does not get into anything with any depth at all. But I am gonna make fun of this simile. The thought was like a ceaseless mind cramp, something too uncomfortable to bear, yet too strong to avoid. They're so bad. He's actually so fucking uncreative. It's crazy. The next page is the note that she leaves on her table. We are only 23 pages into this book, and I feel that it has been so densely packed with information that it has not allowed me to create any sort of emotional connection with Nora before this point in her life. I feel like many of these moments should have and could have had an impact, and they didn't. I feel like I'm an indifferent witness to what's going on with her, and I feel like this crime should be punishable by death, and I don't want to say it. I don't want to say that the Midnight Library should have been longer, but I do think more time should have been spent building up some sort of emotional connection here. I should feel invested in what happens to her. I should have felt a sense of dread. I should have felt honestly, literally fucking anything, but so far, 23 pages in, this has all just been plainly delivered information about her life. And knowing about her life is not the same as feeling a connection to her. But the book doesn't want to waste any time getting to its premise, which we get to in the next chapter, because no, we do not get some sick killing herself scene. Oh my god, so pissed off. The next chapter, she wakes up surrounded by mist in front of a stone library. She enters this library, and inside, it's a lot bigger than it is on the outside. And every shelf, the shelves just go on as far as the eye can see. Every shelf is filled with different shades of green books. She picks up a book, and she hears a voice behind her saying, "You gotta be careful with that." Next chapter. She turns around, and who is it but Mrs. Elm, her high school librarian. Nora sees her, and she reminisces on that phone call that was in the first chapter of the book. It was about her dad dying of a heart attack. She thinks here about how Mrs. Elm had comforted her, and it's trying to tell us that she comforted her in like a really mature way by saying that she didn't offer platitudes or false comforts. And then the next sentence, it says, Mrs. Elm said, "Things will get better, Nora. It's going to be all right." In what fucking universe is that not a false comfort? What are you talking about? Like, what? Hello? Anyway, over the course of the next 2 chapters, which is about 3, maybe 3.5 pages of writing, Mrs. Elm explains the concept of the Midnight Library to Nora not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times, but 6 separate times. It presents this to us as if she is adding more information, but there's no more complexity to it than this very simple idea that the Midnight Library holds all of the alternate lives you could have lived if you made separate choices, and it's a place where you can go to test out those lives. It's between life and death. That's it. So though it is rephrased each time she explains it, there's no new information added. Mrs. Elm asks her if there's anything that she feels like she's done wrong that she would like to change. And Nora says, yes, absolutely everything. I think that this is kind of interesting because while Nora does clearly have a lot of regrets, I'm not denying that whatsoever, it does feel like she has some very reasonable, righteous justifications for the choices that she's ended up making that have hurt other people. Like, for example, when she's talking to Ravi, she says, "I was having panic attacks any time I got anywhere near the stage." It doesn't seem like she feels like apologetic to him or to her brother. Like, it feels like she has made the right decision. That's obviously like the message of the fucking book, but it feels like she knows that she's made the right decision here. That's how she represents it when she's talking to Ravi. So I think this is just like a little bit strange. It could be intentional. I'm not necessarily marking it down for that, but it's weird. Okay, actually, I am kind of marking it down for that because it feels like she's gone back on all of the justification that she feels for her choices and become just a woman filled with this very simplistic black and white regret, because that is easier. That's an easier vessel to deliver this message that the book is trying to deliver to us, right? Anyway, in this chapter, we get some more clunky fucking writing. Listen to this. And this book wasn't green like the others. It was gray as the stone of the front of the building when she had seen it through the mist. Awful. Then we get another fuck-ass simile. She had a slight look of anticipatory pride, as if she'd handed her a Christmas present. It's always the most obvious thing you've ever seen in your fucking life with his similes. Like, they're so hard to read. It's so terrible. Next chapter is the Book of Regrets. She is reading a book filled with every regret she's ever had. We learn little things about her here. She has so many fucking hobbies. That's what we learn in this fucking book. How many interests does this dork have? Geology, philosophy, glaciology, music, swimming, and writing. All of these things she wished she had been. Girl, narrow it down. She starts getting really overwhelmed being confronted with all of these regrets, and she thinks about Dan, the man that she ended up not marrying, that she dropped out of the wedding with him 2 days before. She thinks about how they met. She thinks about how he had this dream of opening a pub in the countryside. We learn that when her mom died, she felt out of control of her own life, and she took that control back by dropping out of the marriage, which felt like a runaway train that she couldn't get off of. She ends up getting really overwhelmed with all of these regrets, and she has to shut the book. And then Mrs. Elm in the next chapter asks her, "What regret would you like to address?" And would you believe it, she explains the Midnight Library for a 7th time. Of course, she chooses to see the life that she could have lived if she had ended up marrying Dan. There's some more shitty writing in this chapter, like this sentence. "You'd be gone forever. You'd be dead. And so would your access to all this." No, you're going to have to flip those 2 sentences around. Your access to all this would be dead? No, that's not. Who proofread this? All my little nitpicks aside, we have now gotten into the first alternate life chapter. Nora testing out a life she could have lived if she had married Dan. And here's where we get into my main issue with this book. And that is that Nora does not have access to the thoughts, feelings, or memories of the Nora who has lived this life. So what I'm thinking is, how the fuck does she know how it feels to live this life when mostly what she's doing here is this like sort of semi-comedic thing where she's trying to blend in and not let on that she has no fucking idea what's happening. She doesn't know what it actually feels like to like embody this life. She just knows what it is like to be dropped into it, and that's not the same thing. She's only able to look at the objective, on paper facts about what has happened or is happening in this alternate timeline. And I think that's fucking stupid. I kind of get the messaging of like, it's still the root you wherever you are, whatever life you live, but I don't think that she can have any sort of grasp on what this life is like without actually feeling what this life is like. Though this book is ostensibly about depression, it's not about feeling. I've said that before. There is no emotion imbued into this book. We get no insight really into how Nora is feeling. It's kind of just how she's thinking, and even then, it's not that insightful in any kind of way about her actual emotions. There is no emotionality to the book itself. But anyway, in this life, as you would expect, it's not all butterflies and rainbows. Owning a pub is not fun. It's like fun to go to a pub maybe when you're 20, but it's not fun to actually own it. There's money problems. Her husband clearly has a drinking problem. And she's also looking at him and remembering all of the things that she didn't really like about him. All of the things that she's been blinded by hindsight in wishing that she had made a different choice. She's realizing that he can be really mean-spirited. He also has cheated on her in this lifetime. He's kind of mocking of her. I think a lot of the things she thinks about him are very reasonable, and I don't want to be as corny as this book is. I feel like it's kind of like leeching off onto me, but one of the things she hates about him is his laugh, and I feel like that's fucking crazy. Like, I cannot imagine a partner's laugh being anything other than beautiful, and she's like, it grates on me. And I get that that could be saying like, look, they're not a good couple. Good couples don't hate the sound of each other's fucking laugh. But it is presented as though this has always been a problem that she's had with him, like even through the fucking honeymoon phase. That's absurd and stood out like crazy. Like, what? In this chapter, we get more evidence of Nora's intelligence, which is yet again just a trivial fucking factoid. This is what I thought being smart was when I was 7. Just knowing a whole bunch of little facts. Like, it's so fucking stupid. We also get yet again, another stupid simile. It's like a little treat once you start looking out for them. It's so delectable. A person was like a city. You couldn't let a few less desirable parts put you off the whole. There may be bits you don't like, a few dodgy side streets and suburbs, but the good stuff makes it worthwhile. Of course, Nora realizes that this wasn't the life she imagined it to be, and she fades back into the Midnight Library once she accepts her disappointment. Back in the Midnight Library, Mrs. Elm asks her how it went. She expresses that she still feels like she wants to die, and Mrs. Elm pushes her to address another one of her regrets, and she prompts her into talking about her dead cat. And she says, okay, I'd like to see a life where I kept him indoors at all times. She gets bamfed into that life, and would you believe it, the cat's indoors, but he's dead. She immediately goes back to the Midnight Library. That's very disappointing. Mrs. Elm says he was always going to die. Just because he died in a road in your regular life doesn't mean he got hit by a car. He had a heart condition. When Mrs. Elm prompts her to talk about the cat, she says, what about your cat? What was his name again? And Nora says, Voltaire. It was a little bit pretentious, and he wasn't really a pretentious cat, so I just called him Volts for short. Sometimes Voltsy if I was feeling jovial, which was rare, obviously. I couldn't even finalize a name for a cat. Okay, first of all cats have fucking nicknames. Made me so mad I couldn't even finalize a name for a cat. My childhood cats were named Brown Cat and Gray Cat. Walk a mile in my shoes and then come talk to me about not being able to finalize a name for a fucking cat. Also, I don't think that Nora has been shown as someone who can't make decisions, which is the more obvious criticism here. Like, she absolutely can and does make decisions that alter her life. That's kind of the concept behind the whole fucking book. So what do you mean I couldn't even finalize a name for a cat? You're not building off of something that we already know about this character. That isn't something we know about her, or something that she seems to feel about herself. She just regrets the choices she makes, but she does make them. Mrs. Elm, again, starts prompting Nora into choosing a new regret that she wants to address, a new life she wants to live. And I haven't made it as clear as the book has made it, but she clearly regrets not going to Australia with her friend Izzy and having this fallout with her. She says something like, isn't it midnight wherever I go? Isn't that the point? Like, I always go to midnight wherever I choose to go. And Mrs. Elm says, yeah, but it's not midnight everywhere. Obviously, so clearly she's referring to the fact that it's not midnight in Australia, and yet The book over explains this to us. It's like Matt Haig thinks his audience is as stupid as he is. Sorry, that's so mean. That's super mean. But like, she doesn't need to be like, are you saying that all of your infinite number of possible universes all exist in Greenwich Mean Time? We got what you were getting at from sentence 1. We don't need to keep going with this. So her consciousness is transferred to an outdoor pool where she's swimming in Australia. People here are greeting her. They're saying, hello, Nora. And the book says to us, explicitly says to us, this means that I'm a regular. He says it as if I'm a regular. Obviously, that's what's happening. Again, Matt Haig thinks we're as stupid as he is. We also get another fucking awesome simile. She felt like a tourist with an unfamiliar currency, not knowing how much to tip. Great. And then we also get some really awful writing. And this is the worst chapter for writing. Okay, first of all, this corniness. Nora noticed something was happening to her face. Could she be? Smiling. And naturally, not just because someone expected her to. Had to put the book down. That is awful. But it's nothing compared to what's coming. Oh my god, I don't know. She's at this pool. She doesn't know where she lives, what's happening, what she's supposed to be doing here. So she gets her phone and she looks at it. And now I flip the page and I see the formatting of poetry. And my heart fucking sinks. Genuine pit in my stomach, sense of foreboding and dread when I saw this, because Matt Haig does not have the depth of insight or the descriptive power or the emotionality in his prose. Is he going to be able to write poetry? Of course he's not. Now, Nora apparently is posting poetry on her Instagram. She opens up her Instagram and she sees this poem. It's titled Fire. Every part of her that changed, that got scraped off because of schoolyard laughter or the advice of grown-ups long gone and the pain of friends already dead. She collected those bits off the floor like wood shavings, and she made them into fuel, into fire, and burned, bright enough to see forever. Also, to be clear, fire and forever are both bolded, which is like such a fucking crazy choice. That is maybe the worst bit of poetry I've ever read in my fucking life. I don't know what made him think that he should make an attempt at that, but he did a really, really, really bad job. Also, the way it's like talking about schoolyard laughter and the advice of grown-ups, like she is so emotionally stunted in this poem. Maybe thinking about it, she is in the whole book, but like, that is written by a 14-year-old. She's 35. She's 30 fucking 5. Matt Haig, I bet he's 45. I don't understand why he's writing a poem like he's 12. This is crazy. Anyway, she keeps scrolling through her phone, and oh me, oh my, when she checks her email, she sees an email that she has sent to someone that she knows back in England, giving her her full address of the new place that she's moved into. This is fucking irritating because, again, like the convenience is just so annoying in this book. She even comments on how distant and like weirdly clipped and formal this message sounds. It says, I have a new job. But then it says, my whole new address, my entire new address. What the fuck? It doesn't even say something like, if you're sending me a letter, send it to this. Would you not, if you were giving your entire address, would you not say what your new job was? This makes no sense to me. This email is absolutely fucking nonsense. She mentions her new job, but not what or where it is, and then gives her full street address. Like, I don't fucking get it. In an email that is incredibly impersonal, I don't get it. Whatever. Obviously, it's just so that she can find her place. Goes there. Her roommate is not Izzy. It's this weird stoner who tells her that Izzy died a month after the two of them moved to Australia together in a car accident. Of course, this disappoints her enough to send her right back to the Midnight Library. Here, the two of them discuss this almost life in Australia, how disappointing it was, the reasons why Nora might have stayed there even though Izzy was dead, yada yada yada, what fucking ever. Nora decides that the next thing she would like to explore is her life if she had stuck with swimming. I think that it is a little bit funny, this just assumption that she has that she would have become an Olympian. I do understand that there are an infinite number of lives here. I just think it's a little bit self-congratulatory being like, I would like to see the one where I was a gold medal Olympian. But that is the next place that she goes to. But before I tell you that, I'm going to tell you another funk-ass simile. Regrets don't leave. They weren't mosquito bites. They itch forever. Am I understanding this right? Like, was this book actually written for 14-year-olds? I'm going to need to look up the author, because if he typically writes YA, I think a lot of things are going to be explained here. Because what the fuck is going on? So Nora wakes up in a hotel room with an itinerary beside her. She's here for a conference. She's kind of like a famous swimmer. She's a gold medalist, and now she's a motivational speaker. Very quickly, she gets a phone call from a woman named Nadia, and she learns that Nadia is her dad's new wife. Her dad, who died when she was a teenager, is alive in this universe. It's crazy. Oh my God, my dad's alive. She does learn that her dad cheated on her mom with Nadia, and her mom actually ended up dying of cancer a lot earlier in this timeline than she did in Nora's regular life. She gets ready for the day and she goes downstairs to see her brother. It seems that they have a lot more amicable of a relationship in this life. I think he's like her manager. And her brother does introduce her to two people who she already knows, and then she is treated as strange for saying nice to meet you because they've already met each other, even though her brother fully is like, this is Rory and whatever her name is. Hello? What? It's like the book doesn't trust us. That is something about this book. There's no trust to understand, like, references that the book has already made. Even if it's only 50 pages in, it doesn't think that you'll remember something from 10 pages ago, so it'll explain it all over again. Like I said, it explains the Midnight Library 7 separate times. It also doesn't think that you're going to be able to infer anything. So the fact that it doesn't tell us their names just like in conversation, it needs an actual direct introduction to these two people who don't even seem to be that important. They're just like organizers of this conference that she's speaking at, is crazy. It's so fucking stupid. The three of them end up bringing her into this conference room where she is set to do a speech. Obviously, this book is gonna make us listen to her do a fucking speech. This is where I have stopped reading at page 102. I am pretty sure that it's gonna make us listen to this speech where she either fails catastrophically or does some fucking spitballing, and it wants us to think that she is capable of giving like a motivational speech. Whatever it is, I am both full of dread and also kind of excited, because it is very fun to pick this book apart than the way that I'm doing. At this point, I'm not 100% sure if the message here is going to be that her attitude is the problem in her life, or if it's going to be something like totally untethered from reality, which I'm expecting, that's like, the life you ended up living is the right one. I get that, but also I think it's fucking stupid. And even still, the idea there is kind of your attitude is the problem. It's like she's depressed. I think it's kind of hilarious. I don't think that the messaging here is going to be positive, like make a positive impact, but I do think it's going to be strong and heavy-handed. I'm going to spend the rest of the afternoon reading this. I'm going to see how far I'm able to get, and I will come talk to you about it later tonight. Okay. I will see you then. Hello there, I'm back 100 more pages into the Midnight Library, and I have a lot less to say this time because the novelty of this book's terribleness has worn off and it's just gotten a little bit boring, and I think I'm being a little bit less critical or maybe a little bit less analytical about it. So I will walk you through these last 100 pages of this fucking book. So in her life as an Olympic gold medalist swimmer, Nora learns that her brother is her manager. He's married to a very nice man, and they seem happy enough. She learns that her mom's death was fast-tracked by a really severe drinking problem that she picked up after her dad's affair came to light. And in talking about herself with her brother, saying, like, you know, Henry David Thoreau's my favorite philosopher, she realizes and promptly forgets that the world isn't black and white, that in this universe where she's a successful swimmer, she didn't get to fall in love with things that she fell in love with in her original life. She does this stupid little speech in front of all of the people, and she totally fucks it. Sometimes it seems like she has control of the crowd, and then other times they seem really confused about what's happening. She knows that in this life she's done a TED Talk, and that there are high standards for her to meet with this speech, and she definitely doesn't meet them. There, I think, are supposed to be some like little gems of wisdom that she gets to in here, but I don't care to repeat them because I think that they're cliche and stupid and they don't tell us anything about her as a character, so I don't know why I would relay them to you. Frustratingly for me, she does reference the fig tree metaphor from the bell jar in this speech, and I feel like Haig gets it totally wrong. Not necessarily totally wrong, but I think he really misses the core of that metaphor, which is indecision. That's not like mentioned at all, or really it seems like that's not how she's understanding the metaphor or how Haig is understanding the metaphor. And I think that is central to it. And I thought that it was kind of annoying. Though, to be clear, I don't care about Sylvia Plath's memory or anything like that. Like, I don't care about anybody getting it right. I just feel like that is this quote from this book that is so often repeated that it feels crazy that he kind of like simplified it and didn't really get to the heart of it. Back in the Midnight Library, after her stupid nothing speech, there is some sort of system error that's happening that Mrs. Elm is totally focused on. She hasn't even noticed that Nora has come back. And this system error is something to do with Nora's will to live. And everything is cleared up when Nora feels this shift inside her, almost a physical shift, where she starts to warm up to the idea of life. Or maybe not quite that far, it's just kind of that she is now a little bit troubled by the idea of death. And we know that her death, or her accepting death, means the library will cease to exist. That will be the path that she chooses. But for now, it's all fine. And for now, she chooses to go and be a glaciologist in fucking Norway. She wakes up hungover and freezing cold on a boat in the middle of nowhere with a whole team of glacier experts who are studying the melting of the ice caps. When she wakes up, her and her roommate have this almost immediate and random heart-to-heart where her roommate very clearly delivers us the message of the book, where she says that she has been trying to escape Oslo because she thought she could escape her grief over what I assume is her partner's death and how it didn't work. It's telling us, like, plainly and clearly that you cannot run from your own interior. At breakfast on this boat, Nora meets a friendly Frenchman, if those exist, named Hugo, who tells her that she has drawn the short straw and she's on lookout duty today. This means that while everybody else is doing all their little sciencey measuring things, Nora is sitting there with a gun and a flare pistol looking for polar bears. And incidentally, what do you think happens but she runs into a fucking polar bear? In this instant that the polar bear is barreling towards her, she realizes, oh my god, I actually don't want to die. When she is faced with the very real possibility of death, she thinks, nope, maybe it's not for me. Now I'm going to read you, if you can believe it, 2 separate quotes from this book. The first on page 134. It wasn't the shock of having been close to death. It was the shock of realizing she actually wanted to live. Then, on page 139, 5 pages later, the shock hadn't been that she'd thought she'd been about to die. She had been about to die ever since she first entered the Midnight Library. No, the shock was that she felt she was about to live. That's the same thing. Who edited this? Now, a lot of what I've said here has been, I can recognize, unreasonable hatred. This is egregious. This is fucking crazy. You've said the same thing twice in 5 pages. You barely rephrased. In these 5 pages, between these 2 quotes, she is thinking about her family and how she kind of feels like she had always been, like, genealogically destined for crushed dreams and disappointment. She talks about her grandparents and what they had aspired to be and what their lives actually turned out like. And then she talks about her parents and the same thing with them. And she realizes that her parents are complex people and she forgives them for this. She is 35 years old. Why does she act like she's 19? Anyway, once she's back in her body after this near-death experience, the glaciologist crew take her out for a dinner when they get back to land. Here, she is trying to, like, get into the conversation, but she can't because she doesn't know anything, because she hasn't lived the life and had the experiences and learned the things she needed to learn to be a glaciologist. So here we get another simile. She felt like a learner driver at a busy junction, nervously waiting for a clear and safe patch of road. His imagination is it's just fucking crazy. Anyway, Hugo manages to kind of corner her, and he starts questioning her. He starts questioning her knowledge of glaciers. He starts questioning why it seemed like she didn't know him this morning, why he introduced himself to her, and that wasn't weird, even though they had met each other the day before. And he tells her that he's just like her, that he is also going back and forth between different timelines. He says, if you want to know more, meet me in the communal kitchen in 5 minutes. And of course she wants to know more and she's gonna go. But before they meet up again, we get a little interlude chapter. It's just half a page, and this is Nora considering her problem with accepting herself and wondering the freedom she might feel, wondering what it might be like if she treated herself with the neutral respect that she affords to nature. This has veered into extreme self-help territory. This is this idea that I was afraid of it's an attitude problem. It's something wrong with you, and if you just change how you feel about things, then everything will be fine. It feels like it's talking down to me at this point. It feels like this non-scientific based kind of self-help where someone just decides that they're the spokesperson for like emotions and like how you should live your life, which I think this author does kind of view himself as, and I thought that this interlude chapter was fucking stupid, and it stinks of what's to come. I haven't finished the book, but I am afraid of the final messaging here. Anyway, her and Hugo meet up, and they have this incredibly long and incredibly boring conversation about, like, the quantum physics of all of this. I'm not going to relay it to you because I don't think you would care, and I didn't care. I think this is just another way that this book is trying to be palatable to everyone. It's like, it's trying to get in this, like, sciencey skeptic crew by being like, look, we can really place what's happening in our real world. This really could happen. It's quantum physics. Like, it's the multiverse, and here's all of the different, like, scientific-esque explanations about it, and I think it's just boring, and I think it's cowardly and stupid. Like, just let something be magical. Come on. What I will relate to you is this dialogue that we get between them. That sounds terrible. It was bearable. I'm begging authors to read your dialogue out loud when you're writing it, because would I ever say something that rhymes with the sentence that someone else just said when both sentences are that short? No, I would not. And I don't think you would either, Matt. Get a fucking grip. Anyway, I actually do have something positive to say in this chapter. It tells us that Hugo has lived like 300 lives. He's been doing this forever, and he's having a really different experience. He's a really different mindset than Nora, which maybe, again, is just this fucking it's your attitude thing. But regardless, he had like had an aneurysm, I think. He hadn't attempted to kill himself. So this is him just like trying out different lives for the fun of it. He says he'll never find just one single life he wants to live because he gets too curious. And I kind of loved that. I thought that that was more charming and more intriguing than anything in the 150 pages so far of this book. The two of them flirt a bit, and then they end up kissing. This is instigated by Nora, and she is able to do this, to be so forward, because she feels absolved of responsibility for her actions because of this multiverse thing, which I think is fucking irritating. I think that this entire book, I have wanted Nora to stop moping around and to take responsibility and also forgive herself for the decisions that she's made. And instead, she finds herself absolved from them. That is so unsatisfying. I hate that, and I hope that it's not the fucking arc of her character. I don't want her to find freedom in the idea that it doesn't matter. I want her to think that things matter in just a different way than she thinks about it right now. Regardless, the two of them end up having sex, and it is so disappointing that she ends up back in the Midnight Library, which is, to be honest, kind of funny. I'll give it to him. Here, back in the library, she tells Mrs. Elm about the polar bear, and she's reminded that if she dies in one of these other lives, the Midnight Library will cease to be, which is, like, okay, but why? Like, why? I don't really understand, but I also just don't really care. Mrs. Elm, would you believe it, explains to her for the 8th time the concept of the Midnight Library. He just likes writing it. Just rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it. Nora chooses to try out her life as a rock star in this band with her brother. She wakes up and she's sweating. She is backstage at a concert that she is performing in. She is a superstar. She's famous, like ultra famous. She has all of the devotion from the fans that she could ever want. Like, there's press. She has this crazy schedule, but her brother isn't here. But she feels awkward asking about where her brother is because she knows that it's something that she should know. Once the concert is over and they're in the car back to the hotel, she opens up her Instagram, finds 11 million followers there, and also finds another version of the fucking poem. Oh my god, this is the new version. She had a fire inside her. She wondered if the fire was to warm her or destroy her. Then she realized a fire had no motive. Only she could have that. The power was hers. I don't even have anything to add. I just feel like that speaks for itself. While she's in the car on her phone, she gets a call from this actor, Ryan, who throughout the book she has mentioned being obsessed with. And it's just like a don't meet your hero situation, which kind of the whole book is that. Ryan and her had been together. They had had a messy breakup. She had broken up with him. He's clear. There's a small orange cat outside. He's clearly not over this breakup, and he also seems like he's kind of a fucking loser. This conversation between the two of them is literally just more exposition. It's more of a person telling her information about herself. It feels like it's just trying to deliver us information, but at least she is also learning things, thank God. In the beginning, it was just two people telling each other things that they already knew with all these exposition conversations, but I did realize here, of course that's going to be the whole book. She's entering lives she knows nothing about, and it makes the dialogue so incredibly unrealistic. It feels so flat and just like not how people talk, just not how people talk to each other, and it's really hard to read. And there's quite a bit of dialogue in here. The only dialogue that could be remotely readable is between Nora and Mrs. Elm, and that is taken up with Mrs. Elm constantly re-explaining to her what the Midnight Library is. So there's no good dialogue in this book. So at first, of course, Nora loves being a rock star. At 35, she is so fucking naive. She's just like, oh my God, people love me. I'm a freaking star. This is what I was destined to be. Fame is awesome. She does this podcast and it all somehow kind of just goes swimmingly, even though she knows literally nothing about herself. And anything that she says that is kind of confusing or not quite right, her manager butts in to clear things up. As if that would like happen in a podcast with someone who's supposed to be like a worldwide rock star. Is the manager mic'd? Like, I don't get it, but whatever. We can let it go. The podcast hosts do recap her last few troubled years, how she has this restraining order against her ex-husband, Dan, the guy that she had that pub with in the first life she went to, all these copyright issues, court cases, going to rehab, like personal struggles, and she thinks to herself, oh, maybe fame isn't all it's cracked up to be. 35 years old. You thought fame was fun and carefree? She responds to this question about her troubled life by doing something that she does in almost every single alternate life, which is go into this spiel about how in another life she might be doing something else, and how comparison is the thief of joy, and how every life has some good and some bad parts of it. In this little monologue that she does, she mentions things that she could have been. She says, I could have been an Olympian. She also says this thing that has made me start to get a little bit suspicious, which is maybe I could have gone on a date with this guy who asked me out for coffee once, and I could be somewhere totally different. Now, this guy, Ash, the guy that had told her about her dead cat, he is mentioned in an offhand way quite a few times, and it is starting to concern me because I am afraid that he going on this date with him is going to be her final timeline. And I think that that will be really irritating to me. And I think that the message will probably be like kind of misogynistic and shitty there. It feels like that's what's going to happen because she's mentioning him a lot in a way that makes it seem like he's just like a really good guy. Like there's just like this total innocence around him, which is already like kind of weird. And Mrs. Elm is telling her, try not to think of just the obvious things that you regret. There might be things that don't even register as a regret, which not going on this coffee date doesn't register to her as being a regret. And those might be the key to a happy life. I don't know. Maybe I'm like totally off base here, but I'm a little bit worried about it. But anyway, after this little monologue that she does, the podcast hosts bring up the death of her brother who she's been looking for, wondering the whereabouts of this whole time, but too worried to ask about. And she's like, oh my God, he's fucking dead. He's overdosed. Of course, this disappointment brings her back to the Midnight Library, where she says, I hate this. I am done with this process. This is too painful. I don't want to do this anymore. Which triggers a small earthquake, and Mrs. Elm goes, no, girl, if you decide to die, it's over. Like, we're done. And she's like, okay, fine. Mrs. Elm, I think, says, remember how you felt after the polar bear. And she goes, okay, fine. Like, fine. I'll try another life. Let's try something a little bit smaller here. A little bit less obvious, like Mrs. Elm is talking about. So she says, I want to try a life where instead of doing my work experience at this music equipment shop that I ended up working for 12 years, I'd rather work at the animal shelter, the thing I almost did. And actually, that's not 100% true because something else happens before that. Mrs. Elm has to kind of pull Nora out of this state where she doesn't want to do this anymore. Like, she hates everything and now she wants to die. So she reminds her of a memory from when she's young. And the library kind of half turns into this river, and Nora sees a younger version of herself swimming across the river on a dare, trying to impress her brother and like his university friends. They're a little bit older than her. Now, this is a really stupid and heavy-handed metaphor that is dragged out for a very long time, but it's pretty obvious. She can't make it across the river because she can't decide. It's too hard, and she can't decide which bank to go to. And Nora does interpret this as something about indecision, which, like I've said, is not really something that the book has set to be a problem for Nora. And if it had, like, would you not get the fig tree metaphor right? But anyways, Mrs. Elm points out that she actually did make a decision, and she fought, and she made it to the other bank, and she survived because she had hope. What fucking ever. It's after this that Nora says, let me lead a gentle life at the animal shelter. Nope, that's not true. I keep missing things that I want to say. Right before she says, I want to lead a gentle life at the animal shelter, Mrs. Elm brings something up that I could smell from a fucking mile away. I knew this was coming in this book, and that is a quote from The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. I thought this was hilarious because of, like, I don't know, I feel like recency bias or something. I have recently learned that poem was written entirely in jest. Like, he is being sarcastic. He's making fun of a friend in that poem. And I get, like, the popular conception of it. Like, people really want to believe in this, like, life you could have lived sort of thing, or, like, really want to take this message of, like, take the road less traveled by. That's not what he was getting at all. He was being a little jokester, a little prankster. He was making fun of his friend who he would go on walks with, and his friend would be like, oh my God, there's a fork in the road. What if there's like a field of wildflowers this way? And he would just put so much weight on this idea of making a decision. And then Robert Frost was like, actually, like, it's probably going to be the same fucking forest either way. And if you read the poem, you'll see that the road less traveled by, he even says, actually, it's not really less traveled by. Now, I do know that that is not like the popular understanding of that poem. I'm sure you've heard it a million times, and you've heard it within the context of, like, take the road less traveled. But at the same time, if you look up the poem, which I assume Matt Haig has access to the internet based off of the Misery Olympics and the tiny little violin and saying big lol, the first link that you click will give you that context for the poem. So I kind of thought it was funny that he put it in here. But also, like, that's just me kind of being on my, like, English major high horse. I think I should be allowed to be on my English major high horse because I am reading this for my major. What happened to literature? This is dog. Anyway, this is the part I'm at. She's working at the animal shelter. She does seem to be happier here. It's unclear if that is... I think it is supposed to be her arc, not, like, she's just entered a happy life. I think she's just, like, accepting things in a more mentally well way. I don't know what it's... I don't think this is going to be where she's going to end. I mean, I have 80 pages left in the book. I'm not sure what it is. I think it might be she's dating her coworker here, which, of course, unnerves her, as it would anyone, because, like, who the fuck is this guy putting his arm around me? I'm wondering if it's going to be something with their relationship that she's disappointed by that sends her back to the library, but I don't know. I'm going to try to read the last 80 pages of this tonight and get back to you, and then leave this behind me. I'll see you later. Hello, I have come to you, God's bravest soldier, having finished the last 80 pages of the Midnight Library. I took way less notes on this than the rest of the book. My notes are so much less detailed because I was reading in just, like, a blind rage at this point. I actually think I'm developing a style for the first time in my entire life because of this book. At this point, all of the extremely clunky writing didn't even register to me. I was not excited to find the terrible examples of similes. I was just tired of reading this book. I'm so happy to be finished with it. I'm recording this. I need to actually go to fucking bed. It's past my bedtime. I am an old person, and I need to get this out of my head. So instead, I'm staying up late to record this and forget about it by tomorrow. Last I spoke to you, Nora was working at this animal shelter, and it was a good life. It was a nice life. She just didn't quite like the guy that she's with in this life. And that is largely because she doesn't know him at all. She's just been plopped right into here. But he is the only reason that she doesn't stay here, which is kind of funny because she says so many times, like, he's such a good person. He's just a pure, good person. Like there's something so good about him. But then she also says something about how the Nora from this life has managed to fall in love with him. Like there's at the same time something inherently wrong with this dude. And at this point, I'm thinking this book is going to get into something about like divine partnership or soulmates or something like that, because she makes sure to emphasize that he is a good guy. But then she's like, nah, he's just too disappointing. I'm going to go back to the Midnight Library. The next chapter just kind of keeps building on that idea, because this is yet another life of her in relationship with a man. This time she owns a vineyard with him and they live in California. And he's like, fine, but it's not the most perfect relationship. And so she leaves this life yet again. Here is where she goes back to the Midnight Library and she starts just doing life after life after life. We no longer get like detailed accounts of her living in these lives. Here, where she's living all of these different lives and it's just giving us little sentences, little snippets of each of them, she's learning that the more lives that you live, the easier it is to think that there is a better life than the one you're currently living. In this chapter where she's just going through all of these different lives that she's led, there is this very irritating plot hole that throws the whole fucking premise away just for this single paragraph of this life that really tells us nothing about her. It's just like, I don't know, padding it out. It says that in this life she was fluent in both Catalan and Spanish. So now she has the memories and knowledge of the lives that she's inhabiting? Really? Really? It's not even necessary. Like the author is throwing it all away just for this quip that adds nothing, is just padding out the text. It's so annoying. But she realizes in this chapter that in living all of these lives in quick succession, she is forgetting her original self. And so she goes to Mrs. Elm for advice. And Mrs. Elm, what do you think she says? Can you say it with me? She re-explains the concept of the Midnight Library to Nora. Mrs. Elm then tells her to think about times in her life when she's been treated with kindness, and what did I fucking say was going to happen? She thinks about Ash. She then enters the longest sequence that we get of her living in an alternate timeline. This life with this man and their child, this life as wife and mother. In this life, she's extraordinarily happy. Most of the problems in her original life are dealt with here, and she's experiencing love, and she realizes that love was the thing that was missing in her life all along. Specifically, the love that you get from inhabiting the role of wife and mother, a role that it seems Matt Haig thinks is the ideal for a woman. I don't think that he knows he thinks this, but I do think he thinks this. Because yes, you are hearing that right. She gets with the right man and everything changes. Of course, Nora can't stay here in this life. That would be a really lame ending that I think would go back on all of the messages that this book is trying to give to its audience. But life with this man, with this perfect partner, is the thing that transforms Nora into someone who is fully committed to her original life. And I think that's fucking lame as hell, and I also think it's deeply rooted in misogyny. There's also this crazy messaging in this chapter where she can tell that this is the most perfect ideal of her life because she's not on antidepressants, which is at the same time like so fucked up for a book that's trying to be some self-help guide about depression, but it's also kind of funny. Like, what are you fucking talking about? Good life equals no antidepressants? Like, antidepressants are not something that address a problem, they're just an indication of a problem. I think that's fucking crazy. I also have a nitpick in this section, this long sequence of her living this life with her husband and her child, where she's thinking about her granddad and she's thinking about whether or not her perception of him as being someone who had a lot of regrets was just a projection, or if maybe he had just made the most out of his life. And she says there was probably a version of their grandfather who went to London and on his first day got run over by a double-decker bus at Piccadilly Circus. Whatever. It's probably that bothers me here because, girl, Mrs. Elm has explained to you the concept of the Midnight Library 9 separate times, and you still cannot grasp what infinite means? It's not probably. There's an infinite amount of lives. I can't even get into it. Oh my god. What's not clicking? I don't fucking get it. In this life with Ash, she ends up understanding how her original life affected other people, and she does this mainly through the kid that she taught piano to in her original life. In this world, he's a big troublemaker, and she's like, oh, that's me. Like, I did that. I'm the reason he's not a troublemaker in the other one. So, of course, Nora ends up back at the Midnight Library. Of course, this book could only ever end with her accepting her original life. And that is how it ends. It's exactly what you would expect to happen. There's a sequence here that, I will give it up, is theatrical, and it's imaginative, and it's very dramatic and well described. I think it kind of plays out like a movie where she's in the Midnight Library and it is crumbling because she's decided that she wants to live. And once she has made this decision with all of her being, the Midnight Library will be no more. But for some reason, she can't just go back to her other life that she tried to die in. She has to make it across the crumbling building to the one empty book and write her own story in it. And she does, of course, make it. And she wakes up vomiting onto her duvet. She gets taken to the hospital. At the hospital, her brother is there, and they have a relationship healing conversation where he tells her, I wasn't actually mad at you about the band. That wasn't why I was icing you out. He says, I was icing everyone out because I had a drinking problem, but I am working on it now. And I love you and I want to be part of your life. He also says here that he wasn't the best to her growing up and he wants to apologize for it, but that there was a reason for that, and that's because he felt like he had to live up to this masculine ideal that their father had laid out for him. He had been in the closet until he was 22 years old, long after their dad had died. And I did appreciate this because I felt that Nora's perception of how she and her brother were treated differentially by her parents was lacking in empathy for her brother's very closeted experience. I thought that she was coming at it with a lot of privilege and not understanding how her brother might have been affected by things differently than she was. She could only see it as her parents thinking the most of her brother and her being an afterthought. And I thought, there's probably a lot behind the scenes there of him trying to live up to things, and I'm very glad that the book addressed it. And then, it's basically for the next 10 or so pages, a whole bunch of self-help, mindless drivel about having gratitude and appreciating life in its imperfections and not being depressed forehead, about choosing to live, about changing your attitude, about the poison of perfectionism, and on and on and on. Hugely missing in all of this messaging is this piece that the book centers around, about Nora always giving up when it's hard. That is not something that is ever talked about in this book, and I think it was just like a gaping hole here. Originally, when she decides to die, she gives up on life because it's hard. She has also spent her life giving up on a lot of things because they're hard. And then every alternate timeline she's in, she's giving up on things because they're hard. And it never says anything about that. And I think that that could have possibly been a strong message because she does end up choosing the hard life, but it's not part of this. Because Matt Haig doesn't know what he's writing about. This also all just feels hugely divorced from reality, like I was expecting it to at the end. This is the perfect life all along? You sure about that? You sure about that? That's true? This is not the reality of depression. This is not the reality of surviving in shitty circumstances. This is the the product that one self-help guru has decided to sell us, that he thinks he's figured out his own shit, and he thinks it's this generalizable, one-size-fits-all bullshit that we can all just accept and incorporate into our own lives. And I think it's stupid. I want to say, I know there is positivity to be found in the messaging here, and if you found some, I think that's honestly great. There isn't necessarily a problem with anything he's saying. I just really don't think it reflects the reality of the lived experience of mental illness. I think it is someone who's trying to sell us some self-help bullshit. And I don't think that Matt Haig has the right to make himself the spokesperson for crawling out of your depression when he has had one very specific experience of it, if he has had that experience at all. I don't know. I don't know anything about this guy, and I don't want to. I assume if he's writing about depression with this much gusto, he probably has some personal experience with it, but it's not an experience, and his way out of it is not an experience that he can generalize to 2 million readers. At the end of the day, if you can't tell, I struggled to find the good in this book. I think it was written really poorly and really simplistically, both on the large scale in a thematic sense, and then also on the small scale. the clunky sentences, the weird word choices. I just thought it was like a task to read because it had, like, I hate saying this because I sound so pretentious, but like no literary quality. Like it just wasn't good. I'm so sorry. I thought it tried so incredibly hard to be inspirational, and it just lacked any nuance or depth with that. Like, okay, she changed her attitude and now magically everything is okay and she's cured and it's all fine just because she's looking at life differently. I don't think that reflects anyone's experience. It's just mindless. Even just the idea that depression is based almost entirely in the feeling of regret is a really simplistic and reductive way of looking at a complex mental illness. And I think that's the best word to describe this book. I think it was really simplistic. I think if you're like a sad 13-year-old who somehow, with such limited life experience, like I was when I was 13, was like, I've done everything wrong and I've screwed it all up and there's no way I can ever have a good life now, this actually probably might be helpful for you. Actually, that's like totally the person this is meant for. So there is someone. Maybe the 2 million people who loved this book, maybe they were all that 13-year-old version of myself. I think I'm gonna go now because I'm kind of tired of thinking about this book. I feel like the messaging was really weird and it made me feel kind of upset that this was sold to so many people when I don't know if it's like positive. I don't know if it's saying helpful things, and I feel weird that I was assigned this for a class. Like I don't think the assignment was to read it as critically as I did. Maybe critically in the way of criticism and not critical thinking was the way I read this book. So thank you for being here through my most hateful video of all time. I promise I'm never going to do this again. The only reason I did this was because it was the sole way I could get through this book and I needed to for school. Now I'm going to go and write 1,000 words about 4 different things I liked about this book, and I don't know how I'm going to possibly manage that, but I'm going to do my best. I will see you next time with a far more positive video and probably a sty. What the fuck is happening to me? Anyway, thank you for watching. Goodbye.